Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. You won't be seeing me for too long because we're focusing on the PowerPoint here. So let's begin. We don't have much time. We're teaching the exam class. With the exam class, whether online or whether face-to-face, these are interesting times. So we're going to take a creative approach, which I think is all the more necessary given these rather difficult times. And let me just begin with a little management. Top right-hand corner, you should see a question mark, a red question mark. When you see this question mark, it means I would like you to participate mentally. Excuse me, we have background interference here. So when you see this question mark, I would like you to interact mentally. I won't be able to hear you, but I want you to think about what I'm showing you. And now let's test the sound as well. Can you hear my voice? Let's read what Peppermint Patty is saying about examinations. She's talking about handing in an essay. Handing in an essay test when you know you did terrible is an awful feeling. You walk back to your desk and you want to die. Except you don't die, and come October, and school until June, and there'll be essay tests and more agony, and what? Your question is, how does Peppermint Patty conclude this dilemma of hers with examinations? And you can see how she feels about exams. And we're going to be focusing a little bit on how students feel. So that's your question, which we'll come back to at the end. And what? What's the conclusion when students are faced with the challenge of taking examinations with all the difficulties involved? Well, let's take an example of a typical speaking task from an examination. This is actually authentic, and I just want you to think about it. These questions are designed, of course, to get students to speak so they can be assessed. Our question is, will they do the job? Will they stimulate students to speak and therefore get a good mark? Perhaps the answer is yes, some will, some won't. It's a bit of potluck. We're not quite sure whether these questions are going to be appropriate in the exam situation. In the classroom, on the other hand, we have the option of adapting the exam format a little bit, and in a very tiny way here. This is the creative version of the same task, where students would choose 3 questions which they would like the examiner to ask them, make a note of them, and they could choose 3 questions which they would hate the examiners to ask them, because unfortunately students don't choose the questions that are going to be put to them. So we need both types of questions. The first type, of course, will allow students to answer questions that they feel comfortable with. And the second type will put them on the spot and give them necessary exam training. And they can swap these questions, whether face-to-face or online, and interview each other with their own questions. Let's go now to another brief test. This is actually my plan for today, and you've got 30 seconds reading comprehension to look through it and to get an idea of what we're going to do today. It's divided up into 6 questions. 30 seconds to see the plan for today. So there you go. That's the plan. Question number 1. What do students say about tests? This is very important. When in doubt, begin with where the students are at, and particularly where the students are emotionally, because examinations have this power to arouse strong feelings, and feelings is, of course, the F word. And I want you to just read these 4 authentic quotations from actual students and identify the F words, words beginning with F or words with F in them. And they'll give us some idea of how students feel about exams. Like our Peppermint Patty at the beginning. So the F words, notice, F for feel. Feelings are important. If you feel anxious, you're not going to do well in examinations. Fail, the fear of failure. The definitive aspect of taking examinations is the fear of failure. Then, of course, there is the random element, fluke. Fluke is not F, Luke. That doesn't refer to yours truly. It's the well-known phenomenon of random exam results. It's the hit and miss element, particularly with true, false, and multiple choice types of questions. Difficulties, exams, number 3, difficulties. Exams are characterized by obstacles, as if we're deliberately putting obstacles in the way of students. Candidates, let's call them. When they are actually learners, we do the opposite, of course. We try to make things easier, not more difficult for the learner. And defect. Defect refers to their feeling of lack of self-esteem when they fail, when they don't do well. So this is important. Self-esteem and the lack of it blocks language acquisition, which we don't want. So to sum up, number 4 is a kind of summary: failure and the lack of self-esteem. So you see, these are our F words. They give us a good idea about how our students feel. So, and on to our other subject. The other strand of this is, what is creativity? And how can we apply it to resolve some of these difficulties, which we've already identified? How to help students do well in examinations by overcoming some of the obstacles that exams, by definition, put in their way. So looking at creativity, here are 5 examples of creativity. They all have something in common, but there is one odd one out. Shakespeare's sonnets, Beethoven's music, Paul McCartney's lyrics, Luke's holiday snapshots, and a painting by Frida Kahlo. They're all examples of creativity. Which one stands out? Which one is different from the others? Well, you've got the question mark in the top right-hand corner. You're thinking away, and you've rudely decided that my holiday snapshots don't go with the other examples of real creativity. They are nevertheless my holiday snapshots, or my snapshots of butterflies, which I've been taking recently, are examples of what we might call personal creativity. Personal creativity as opposed to historic creativity, which we'll come back to. That's an example of my own personal creativity, taking photographs of butterflies, if you like. And we'll come back to that in a minute. But what about your personal creativity? Do you, the teacher, engage in theatrical, music, poetry activities, photography, painting, ceramics, whatever, dancing, anything you think demonstrates your own capacity to be creative? This is important as a starting point, the teacher's own creativity. So there we seem to have identified then 2 different types of creativity. Personal, I've given you an example of mine, and historic creativity. Historic creativity is the creativity of famous people whom history has acknowledged as creative. And here are 3 examples: William Shakespeare, Emily Bronte, and Paul McCartney. Now, all these pictures have something in common, and they tell us something about the nature of creativity. One of the things about creativity is that individual geniuses, however clever they are, William, Emily, or Paul, they are not alone. They collaborate. These are pictures of them with their peers, their collaborators, the other people that they learned from and they co-created with. They did not do it on their own. They stand on the shoulders of their brothers and their sisters and their friends. And this will have implications for group activities in the classroom and paired activities. Students are not alone. So it's one important aspect of creativity. Another aspect, and a definition which takes us all the way back to the great Greek philosopher, Heraclitus, famous for his pandarin, everything flows. But the other thing he said, which is fascinating and relevant to our topic today, is what is creativity? Well, this great Greek philosopher says it's the wonderful harmony that arises from joining the seemingly unconnected. Now think about that, joining the seemingly unconnected. This is going to be very useful when we come to the exam class. Well, let's look at an example of what he might mean. Let me go back to my own personal creativity are, I'm going to take pictures I've taken recently of butterflies. And I think when I look at them, only 2 of them, I think, show evidence of creativity in Heraclitus's sense of joining the seemingly unconnected. Here are the 4 pictures. You're thinking now, they're all nice, pretty colors and so on, nice butterflies in each one. There's a butterfly. But which one demonstrates to some extent this element of creativity, of joining the seemingly unconnected? If you look at number 1, there's a butterfly and there's a flower. And on the top left-hand corner is the butterfly with the flower, the shadow of the flower on top of the butterfly. And the other one is just a butterfly with pretty lavender color there. Third one is a butterfly with something peculiar, mysterious in the background. What is that red thing in the background? Then there's another butterfly with another red patch. Well, I would say this is one of my creative efforts, and it does join the seemingly unconnected, as you can see, the flower and the butterfly, beautifully brought together. They're not normally together. And this one too, the butterfly, a beautiful specimen from nature, and a beautiful car in the background, both reflecting the shape of the wing in 2 senses, the butterfly's wing and the wing of the car, the reflector, reflecting each other. Beautiful. So there you go. So this is joining the seemingly unconnected. Now, the other philosopher, briefly, that I'm going to draw on is David Hume, Scottish philosopher, who talks about creativity and transformation, the process of transformation, changing A to B, we could call it. There are many ways in which this happens. Here's a classic example. Monet and his Duke's Palace in Venice. Notice the original on the left, and what he's done with it in terms of color, particularly in terms of shape, in terms of the light, to produce a creative masterpiece. So that's the 2 things, joining the seemingly unconnected and transforming A to B. And of course, the collaborative aspect, which I mentioned at the beginning. Those 3 features, which we're going to look at. This is an example then, which will also give us a classroom example or an online example, if you like. Pictures which we get from the internet. 2 pictures of Frida Kahlo. There's the original photograph of the lady herself. And this is what she did on the right with the photograph. And I think it probably does demonstrate joining the seemingly unconnected, as we shall see, and transforming A to B. The collaborative element, we could say, is that she was not painting alone. She had Diego Rivera, she had her other Mexican colleagues. So that's the 3 elements. But in the classroom, what we can do is classic B2 type of exercise, spot the differences, compare and contrast the 2 photos. And if you did this, it will give the students a chance to do this together, A and B. You can identify a lot of changes that she's made, the transformations that this wonderful Frida Kahlo has implemented here to produce a masterpiece. The hair, the eyebrows, the eyes, size of the eyes, the shape, the nose. Fascinating. We could talk for a long time about why she's done this and what effect it produces and what she says about the nature of femininity and the nature of art. A highly political statement in many ways. But she also adds things. She transforms the picture. She connects, if you like, things that you would not normally connect with this young Mexican girl. In the first photograph, she's contextualized herself in a jungle or something. There's a monkey on her shoulder, a snake around her neck, and so on. And she's wearing some strange clothes. So there you go. This demonstrates in an artistic way and in a pedagogic way an activity based on these concepts of creativity that I've mentioned. So let's finish, if you like, with question 5 of our plan, which is more examples from the classroom. Here is a classic gap filling, which we find in examinations, and we have to do this kind of thing. It's a necessary training for preparing students to do well in the exam. But the question is, we do better when the text is comprehensible and when it's memorable. And again, it's hit and miss whether this text is going to engage the learner and help them remember their English so they can do well when they read for the examination and when they do their lexicogrammatical gap fillings. But we can easily adapt this in using the principles that I've suggested of collaboration, disconnected, the seemingly unconnected, and transforming A to B. What I've got here is a student text on the left there. I will never forget the day she said, my student, Athanasia. She wrote a text and she used her notes to talk about a painting that she had chosen to present to the rest of the class. The rest of the class, there's the collaboration, would ask her questions about this painting, why she chose it. At the end of the process is where I take her notes, and as the teacher, I correct mistakes, put some gaps in, and in the next lesson, we can use the gap text as revision, as exam practice, but you notice it all originates with the student choice of painting, choice of words, choice of text. These are her words, which I'm using to drive forward, motivate the students. Another example, two classic photographs in the speaking test, hit and miss, whether we're going to motivate the learners. It's a necessary evil, if you like, boring photographs. In some cases, they may be interesting photographs. It's hit and miss in the exam. But what we've got to do as teachers when we're teaching and not testing is give them choices to be more creative. And here we've got two pictures which are again related, and they do take us much further, both in terms of language acquisition, memorability, and actual real CLIL type content. This is Van Gogh's famous painting Starry Night. And this is the origin. This is what he did. This is how he transformed A to B, connecting the seemingly unconnected. He took the place where he was incarcerated as a mental patient, and that's what he could see through his window. This is an authentic picture of the place. And he transformed it in this marvelous way. And students would talk about these two pictures. What can you see? What has he changed? What are the colors, the shapes, the objects? So he's not only connected things which are not in the original, he's added things and he's transformed A to B. And the students would work together on this. And to integrate testing, because the different parts of tests are often completely disconnected, we can connect them. And the reading that they would engage in could be text that they've Googled, they've gone into Wikipedia and they've found out as a little project information about the painting by Van Gogh. This is one student's task, and he or she is looking into Starry Night, finding out about it, bringing the text to class to tell us about it. The other student would look at the place where he was incarcerated, where he was being cared for in his difficult times of mental crisis. And so we've got the two texts which go with the two pictures, you see. So we're learning and reading and exchanging and engaging. Another example, very briefly, a classic painting. Back to the wonderful Frida Kahlo. But notice here the power of grammar, the power of the little words. The questions are all in the third person, as you can see. Now, is this going to be memorable? Talking about this painter that some of the students may not have heard of. How can we bring this closer to the students? Make it more memorable, make it more meaningful. Well, take the little pronoun she. It's so easy to change it to you. You, the learner, you are Frida Kahlo. Role play Frida. And now answer the questions. How old are you? Where are you? How does she feel? What is she thinking? Where do you live? What are you thinking? And what are you holding? Who is this man? And the students can use their imagination before they go to the internet and find out what the painting is all about in the original. But the main thing is the process of engaging. Transformations, talking of transformation as a definitive feature of creativity, well, the examinations have always had this transformative feature, called indeed transformations. Now here I just want you to focus on the subjects of these very useful lexicogrammatical exercises. You all know how it works, keyword, and we transform it using up to 2 to 5 words. Notice the subjects: Harry, grandmother; Paul, Larry's grandfather. Well, in this case, they're all male. We can do a gender bending activity, as I call it, where you say to the students, okay, you've got the right answers now, well done. Now I want you to transform, to rewrite the same sentences and put female subjects in. And they do this, and it's good practice for them. It's a controlled use of English task. And the names, of course, now are female: Harriet, grandmother; Paula, Laura. And then you say, well, look at the content now. Is it still okay? According to your own culture, in Greece, in Italy, in Cuba, wherever you happen to be, do females go around on motorbikes? Why? Why not? Would your grandmother learn to swim when she was 60? Would Paula go to a nightclub? Yes or no? Why not? Some girls would, others may not. For what reason? And there's Laura's grandmother teaching her Chinese. So we can do more. We can connect. Can take these sentences and do something else with them. Say, okay, I want you to write a composition. Take the original, boring, lifeless sentences. You've got the right answers now. You can choose the original or the transformation. Write a composition. And I want you, first of all, to put real people into the sentence. So Luke is a real person. Vicky is a real person. Ilika is a real person. Just examples. Could be anybody in the class or a famous person. But now the subjects are real people. And then we have a composition. Students go away, they do a creative bit of writing, which is they take a sentence from the use of English and they include it somewhere in their essay, their composition, in this case, a narrative. And they show each other their work. They collaborate, they show each other, and they have to identify the sentence that the other student has actually incorporated, integrated, recycled into the writing task. You see how we're integrating the different parts of the test, connecting the seemingly unconnected. And it makes it all more memorable, more harmonious, more satisfying. These are the original sentences, and this is what we've done with them. But of course, now that we've got the sentence, Luke thought it would be a good idea to go to the cinema, not Joan, whom nobody knows, but they all know Luke. They can now turn to Luke and ask him questions. So you did go to the cinema. Which film did you see? Who did you go with? Why did you choose this film? You see, it comes to life. And these are typical kind of things that they have to talk or write about in examinations. But what you've done is you've integrated the student's world with the exam world. Okay? So, how do testing and teaching differ? To sum up, we have a couple of minutes. Very easy to sum up. With one picture, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Famous cartoon, one of my favorite pedagogic visuals of all time. Here is the teacher, there are the students. What do you notice about the students first? That they're all different. What do you notice about what the teacher says? To make sure it's a fair test, I'm going to give you all the same task. All I want you to do is to climb up into that tree. Wonderful exam task. Of course, it'll sort out the monkeys from the elephants, if you like, the sheep from the goats. But when we teach, we recognize the differences between learners. And we address those differences and we engage the learner as an individual. When we test them, and this is a necessary evil, we have to treat them all the same. And that's fine. We have to prepare them for this sad reality. But when we teach, we try to teach in the best way we know how, which is taking the individual and connecting them with what is happening in the lesson, whether it's an online lesson or whether it's a face-to-face lesson. And to go back to, what's her name? Patty, Peppermint Patty, I think her name is, from Charlie Brown. So handing in an essay test when you know you did terrible is an awful feeling. You walk back to your desk and you want to die, except you don't die. And then October comes along and school and June, and there'll be more essay tests and more agony. Oh, she's despairing. She's going to fail. She's going to lose her self-esteem. And what? So what do? Well, if you have a teacher, a good teacher who motivates you, who treats you as a potentially creative person with your own personal creativity, then things may work and help you get through the exam, because you'll remember these lessons forever, and particularly when the exam comes along. But if all fails, well, maybe they should just try working hard, just try studying. And that's the hard fact. So if all else fails, then there's nothing like hard work, is there? So there you go. That's a very brief, intensive tour of making exam lessons a little bit more creative. There are many, many more things we can do, of course. These are some of the things that I have done, and I'm glad to have shared them with you. And I hope they stimulate you to do your own thing, whether face-to-face when we get back to normal, or online, because online work is going to be with us forever. So we'd better try and make it as creative as possible. So thank you very, very much. I hope that was coherent. It's early in the morning, so perhaps better next time. Thank you very, very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the webinars with Dimitris and Anastasia. Take care and be safe, as they say.